Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our source material today takes us on a focused journey through the career of the brand and the really surprising personal story of Christopher Hemsworth.
Exactly. Our mission here is pretty straightforward. We're synthesizing the story of an actor who very intentionally built this global financial and cultural powerhouse,
Right.
but who then recently had to pivot his entire focus from, maximizing fame to maximizing his health. We really need to chart that full, sometimes bumpy trajectory.
And move well past the hammer he's so famous for.
Well, past the hammer.
Absolutely. This isn't just a list of credits. It feels more like an examination of strategic branding and, I think, resilience. We're tracking the man who's now known as Christopher Hemsworth AM, and that AM is important.
It is. It stands for Member of the Order of Australia. It's a national honor for significant service.
And he was born August 11, 1983 in Melbourne, and has really transitioned from just being an actor into an incredibly powerful film producer and entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it's a career built on, well, sheer physical dedication and a surprising amount of self-awareness. For you, the listener, the real deep dive here is understanding how he overcame that early industry prejudice, how he perfected the art of self-parody to fix a career slump, and how he now confronts the ultimate challenge, this high-probability genetic vulnerability, at the absolute peak of his physical and commercial success.
Okay, so let's unpack this starting at the absolute foundation, because the source material really paints a fascinating picture of duality in his origins.
There really does.
You have the sophistication of Melbourne on one hand, and then that's contrasted so sharply with the rugged, remote Australian outback.
That geographical contrast is absolutely key to understanding his early sensibility. I mean, ancestrally, his background is pretty varied for a modern Australian. His maternal side has a Dutch immigrant grandfather and an Irish grey mother, while his paternal side is English, Scottish, and German. But the real story, like you said, is in the upbringing.
Right. He wasn't just a city kid from Melbourne, Victoria, where he spent a lot of his time and went to Heathmont College. The family also spent a really significant portion of their formative years in a place called Bulman, in the Northern Territory.
And this is where his most vivid childhood memories were forged. He actually described being in Bulman with crocodiles and buffalo.
Wow.
Just imagine that contrast, going from a suburban high school environment in Melbourne to the extreme, remote wilderness of the outback.
Yeah.
That juxtaposition of, high density and deep wilderness must have instilled an incredible baseline of resilience and, well, a wide emotional register, which is crucial for an actor.
That's a great point. It gives him a natural complexity that you can see informing his later, often very physical roles. And he wasn't navigating this professional path alone either. The sources are quick to remind us that this is basically a family trait.
Precisely. He is the middle son. His older brother Luke was born in 1980 and his younger brother Liam in 1990. And both of them are also working actors.
So it wasn't a random decision.
Not at all. It establishes that the pursuit of acting wasn't this lone, out-of-the-blue choice. It was a strong, maybe even expected, familial inclination.
So with that foundation, how did that early life translate into his professional apprenticeship in the Australian market? It started, like it does for so many of his peers, on local television.
Yeah, he built up that essential experience between about 2002 and 2004 with a string of brief credits. We see him in these small roles, like 3 episodes of a fantasy series called Guinevere Jones, where he was cast as King Arthur.
Okay.
He had minor appearances in the long-running soap Neighbours and a couple other series, Martial Law and The Saddle Club. These roles were, for all intents and purposes, his foundational acting school.
But the pivotal, career-defining apprenticeship, the one that would give him all this visibility but also carry a kind of hidden professional cost, that was his commitment to Home and Away.
That's the critical turning point. He first auditioned for a role called Robbie Hunter, but was quickly recalled and cast as the character Kim Hyde in 2004. And this was a monumental commitment. He had to move to Sydney and appeared in 171 episodes, staying with the show all the way until 2007. So for the general Australian public, he was famous. I mean, he was everywhere.
And here is where the insider critique of the Australian industry comes into really sharp focus. The sources highlight that despite this enormous visibility, which you'd think translates into fame-sick, Hemsworth later reflected that work on a soap opera did not earn him respect within the film industry.
And that is a profound professional hurdle. He was labeled. And that labeling made the jump to serious feature film work incredibly difficult. Hollywood often views soap opera training as, disposable or amateurish.
Too much volume, not enough nuance.
Exactly. It's all about volume over nuance. He had to battle that perception, which is why his early successes in the U.S. were so crucial for his credibility.
And speaking of visibility that almost became a liability,
Mm-hmm.
we have to talk about the story of Dancing with the Stars.
It's an incredible anecdote from the source material. In 2006, while he was still on Home and Away, he appeared on the Australian version of Dancing with the Stars.
Right.
And was eliminated after 6 weeks. It was just a brief, lighthearted detour. However, the sources reveal that this appearance almost cost him the Marvel role of Thor several years later.
You're kidding. Because of a dancing show.
Yes. The producers, and this is the absolute absurdity of Hollywood casting politics, they feared the fan reaction. They were concerned that having a literal deity, the god of thunder, who had previously been eliminated after 6 weeks of performing the cha-cha,
Would undermine the seriousness of the character.
it would undermine the gravitas of the character. It just underscores this tightrope walk of brand building. The producers worried about the dissonance, a TV personality known for quick steps suddenly wielding Mjolnir. He cleared the hurdle, obviously, but it shows how these early, seemingly harmless choices can haunt a celebrity's narrative.
So he makes this calculated decision to leave the relative security of Australian TV and make the jump to Hollywood. To prove himself, he needed a high-impact debut that was as far away from that soap opera stigma as possible.
And he got it. Immediately. With his first major U.S. film role in 2009, he was cast as George Kirk, James T. Kirk's father, in the opening sequence of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot.
It's a very short role. He's on screen for, 5 explosive minutes?
5 minutes that redefined his career overnight. A critic famously cited that sequence as the best 5 minutes I've spent in a movie theater this year.
That is the definition of a high-impact debut. He didn't need to carry the whole film. He just needed to make an unforgettable entrance.
It was pure, raw charisma and action. And the backstory confirms the stakes. That role was first offered to Matt Damon, who turned it down.
No way.
Yes. So the fact that a relative newcomer stepped into those shoes and delivered such a critically praised, powerful opening just set him immediately on the right path. The film went on to massive commercial success, grossing over $385 million, validating Abrams' decision and Hemsworth's talent.
And by 2010, the industry had noticed. He was noted by The Hollywood Reporter as one of the young male actors pushing or being pushed onto the Hollywood A-list. He was suddenly a viable commodity, but he was also trying to show some range outside of that blockbuster start.
Right. His other early roles gave him a chance to diversify a little bit. In A Perfect Getaway in 2009, he got praise for an appropriately intimidating performance as a thuggish backpacker.
So he's leveraging that physicality, but in a darker way.
Exactly, a more dramatic context. And then there's the very first film he actually shot when he arrived in the United States, which was a movie called Ka that came out in 2010.
Okay.
The director's memory of casting him is wonderfully blunt. Hemsworth had only been in the U.S. for 6 weeks when he auditioned. The director said, here's a guy who is young, has the right look, is a very good actor, and let's face it, he's beautiful.
Huh. Just lays it all out there.
He does, and he says, so I say, we need to get this guy in. I was very impressed. That observation that he had the trifecta of looks, youth, and talent, it perfectly summarizes why he accelerated so quickly from Australia to that A-list conversation.
And it sets the stage perfectly for the role that would demand all three of those qualities and a whole lot more physical dedication.
So if Section 1 was the strategic positioning, Section 2 is where Christopher Hemsworth becomes a global, financially indispensable brand. This is the era of the God of Thunder, starting in 2011.
The casting process itself is now, part of Marvel mythology. He was auditioning alongside Tom Hiddleston, who ended up becoming his on-screen adoptive brother and nemesis, Loki. But beyond the chemistry, the single biggest requirement for the role of Thor was the physical transformation.
It was a complete professional reinvention. He was tasked with gaining a mandatory 20 pounds of muscle to embody this Norse god.
And this wasn't just for looks.
Not at all. This dedication to extreme, continuous physical optimization became the defining trait of his brand for the next decade. He was literally building the foundation of his career in the gym.
So the first Thor film, in 2011, it was a definitive commercial success, made about $450 million worldwide, ranked 15th highest-grossing film of the year, Critics are pretty receptive, too.
They were, but the transition from successful solo hero to global icon was instantaneous with the following year's The Avengers.
Uh,
That film was a cultural earthquake. It grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide and just fundamentally changed the landscape of Hollywood blockbusters.
and crucially, the sources highlight that this wasn't just a spectacle. It worked because of the people. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone specifically praised the ensemble cast for their remarkable on-screen chemistry.
That chemistry was the rocket fuel. It allowed Thor, who could sometimes feel a little stiff in his solo film, to relax and play off the established, snarky dynamic of the other heroes.
Right, with Iron Man and Captain America?
Exactly. The ensemble even won an MTV Movie Award for Best Fight. So this wasn't just a financial win. It was a cultural acceptance of this new shared universe model.
But during this rapid ascent within the MCU, he was actively trying to diversify his portfolio, right? He was trying to prove he could thrive outside the Cape and Hammer.
That's where the delayed releases and the genre experiments come in. We see The Cabin in the Woods finally hitting screens in 2012, a horror comedy he shot almost immediately after Star Trek. It was critically well received, and it let him show a self-aware, genre-bending performance.
And it gave him his first taste of being recognized for his looks outside of a superhero context.
Yeah.
Mashable described his role as the alpha male jock, as his sexiest performance yet. It was a good sign that he could appeal in different settings.
But the immediate follow-up to The Avengers was Snow White and the Huntsman, also in 2012. Commercially, it was a success, $396 million globally. But critically, it was deeply mixed. And this is where the challenge of carrying a film outside of Marvel first started to emerge.
What were the specific issues critics were flagging in the sources for that one?
The consensus was that the script just didn't match the spectacle. Specifically, critics cited a palpable lack of chemistry between Hemsworth and Kristen Stewart, and they noted that the characters felt not fully fleshed out. It's a recurring theme in his career. When the script falters, even his star power struggles to salvage it.
Then we have the unusual case of Red Dawn, also from 2012, which was just a straight-up box office failure. Grossed only $50 million against a $65 million budget.
The sourcing details on this film are fascinating because they speak directly to his quickly rising stock. He was cast as Jed Eckert only 2 days after he got the role of Thor.
Wow, it's fast.
Super fast. It was based solely on the strength of the dailies, the raw footage from The Cabin in the Woods. That rapid casting proves the industry was desperate to secure him, but the resulting film just didn't land.
So we're seeing this pattern emerge. 2 massive MCU successes anchoring his celebrity, surrounded by these other projects with wildly mixed results. But in 2013, he achieved a necessary critical triumph with Rush.
Rush was a huge turning point. It was directed by Ron Howard, and he played the 1976 Formula One world champion James Hunt. This was the moment the industry truly validated his dramatic talent outside of the fantasy blockbusters.
Henry Barnes of The Guardian offered significant praise, specifically commending Hemsworth for delivering this superb script with some mastery. He proved he could inhabit a complex, real-life character under a celebrated director.
It was absolutely essential validation because right after that, in late 2013, came the first true critical stumble within the MCU itself. Thor. The Dark World.
Commercially, though, it was huge. $644 million.
Immense. But critically, the sources confirm it became the lowest-rated MCU film on Rotten Tomatoes at the time, with only a 66% approval rating.
That's a huge drop in quality for a sequel. If the critics were so displeased, what was the element that saved the franchise from being a total disaster?
This is where the synergy of the ensemble really shines. Critics were unified in their opinion that the saving grace was the chemistry between Hemsworth and Hiddleston. One critic noted that thanks to their impressive collective charisma, the film was far from a franchise killer.
So it was the Thor-Loki dynamic that carried the whole movie.
It carried the whole narrative load.
Yeah.
It suggests that those early non-Joss Whedon Marvel projects often struggled with finding the right tone, and it really took the strength of the performers to pull them through.
That pressure to deliver outside of the MCU then intensified, which led to a pretty profound professional setback in 2015. The action thriller Black Hat.
Black Hat was a box office bomb and poorly received, but the analysis of why it failed is critically illuminating for his career. The core complaint wasn't just the plot, it was the casting. Critics found the idea of a hunky Hemsworth playing a computer hacker unbelievable.
That is the ultimate case of typecasting becoming a liability. His defining physical characteristic was actively working against the performance.
Exactly. Christy Lemire of the Chicago Sun-Times said it explicitly. Anyone who makes their way in the world sitting in front of a computer screen all day is not going to look as hunky as Hemsworth.
It was a massive professional
A
misstep.
huge one. And what sets Hemsworth apart is his self-reflection on this failure. He publicly admitted he was deeply displeased with his own performance, calling it flat, and confessed he felt he attempted to do what I thought people might have wanted to see, but I don't think I'm good in that space.
That moment of self-critique is so crucial. It signals a major shift. He realized that playing against type just by, removing the hammer wasn't enough.
He needed to play into his strengths, or at least be more self-aware about them, and we see that immediate physical shift in his next major non-superhero role, In the Heart of the Sea, also in 2015. This time, the physical commitment was focused on starvation.
Can you detail the sheer dedication involved there?
He played Owen Chase, the first mate on the doomed ship that inspired Moby Dick. And to portray these starving sailors, the sources report that Hemsworth and the cast were on a diet of only 500 to 600 calories a day.
That is just extreme commitment to the craft.
It is. But despite that dedication, the film was a box office disappointment. It just barely recouped its budget.
So 2015 was a year of real extremes for him. A box office dud where his physique worked against him, a physically transformative diet role that failed commercially, but then a fun cameo in Vacation and a delightful uncredited return to the home and away set. It was clear a creative pivot was needed. Moving into the 2016 era, we see that creative pivot fully take shape. It starts with one final major franchise fumble, but it's immediately followed by the discovery of his true, untapped strength comedy.
The fumble was The Huntsman. Winter's War in 2016, a sequel that underperformed even worse than the first film, grossing only about $165 million worldwide.
It basically signaled the death of that franchise.
Completely. The sources confirmed the critical issues were largely unchanged. IndieWire was particularly harsh, criticizing the zero chemistry he shared with co-star Jessica Chastain, noting both were struggling uphill against accents they're palpably not comfortable with.
Ouch.
It seems like he learned a harsh lesson. These forced dramatic roles outside of Marvel were continually failing to capture critical enthusiasm or box office returns. But that same year, he found a creative lifeline, a role that was pure, self-aware comedic relief. Kevin the Receptionist in the Ghostbusters reboot.
The shift was immediate and profound. Despite the film's overall mixed reception, Hemsworth's individual performance was universally hailed. One critic noted that he delivered the most fun.
He wasn't relying on his heroism, he was leaning into his physical absurdity and his comedic timing. And that success was officially cemented when he won a Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Movie Actor for that role. This wasn't just a detour, it was a revelation.
It provided the blueprint for the character transformation that would save his most important franchise.
Exactly. The MCU. And that transformation began in full force with Thor Ragnarok in 2017. This film, directed by Taika Waititi, was a critical and commercial smash, and it explicitly allowed Hemsworth to embrace the comedic freedom he'd found in Ghostbusters.
Ragnarok really did save the franchise from the mediocrity critics had assigned to the Dark World.
Without a doubt, critics lauded the lightness and Hemsworth's renewed charisma. Film critic Matt Zoller Seitz went so far as to liken his charisma to classic Hollywood, comparing him to Cary Grant.
That is exceptionally high praise, moving him from an action hero to a sophisticated comic actor. And the culmination of this self-parody came in 2019's Avengers: Endgame.
Endgame utilized his newfound comedic footing to deliver the greatest visual joke of the film, Fat Thor. Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal wrote an analysis that perfectly synthesized this arc. He praised Hemsworth as the graceful, exuberant comic actor he was destined to be, morphing Thor into the beer-bellied apparition who could pass for Jeff Lebowski.
It's a brilliant move. It took that critical complaint from Black Hat, that his perfect physique was unbelievable, and just flipped it on its head. It allowed him to use his body as a comedic prop and prove his ability to be vulnerable and funny and still be heroic.
And that critical success gave him undeniable leverage. That confidence and the high market value of his star power was evident in his negotiations outside the MCU. We see this with the planned fourth Star Trek reboot film. Hemsworth was scheduled to reprise his role as George Kirk, but in 2018, he walked away.
He didn't just walk away because of money either. The sources confirm he was dissatisfied with the script. That move demonstrates the maturity of an actor prioritizing creative integrity over a guaranteed massive paycheck. He was curating his brand.
He still tried to anchor a major non-Marvel franchise with Men in Black, International in 2019. It did okay, about $250 million at the box office, but critically, it was another disappointment. Reviewers cited lackluster action and forgettable plot.
But the pattern holds. His personal chemistry was the saving grace. He was paired with Tessa Thompson from Ragnarok, and their interaction was widely praised. It confirms that his greatest successes rely on a strong, dynamic partner to play off of.
And this is where we see the most profound shift in his commercial viability, moving into high-volume, high-value independent action with the Netflix Extraction franchise. This established him as a producer who could anchor his own IP outside of the traditional studio system.
The success of the first Extraction in 2020 was instantaneous. It redefined what a direct-to-streaming blockbuster could be, breaking Netflix's viewership record by reaching 90 million households in its first month.
That success was validation. It proved that Hemsworth's name and physical commitment alone could guarantee a massive global audience without a theatrical release. He officially transitioned from just a star to a bankable producer and financial behemoth in the action genre.
And the studio certainly paid for that power. For Extraction 2 in 2023, the sources report his salary was a massive $20 million.
That figure places him squarely in the absolute top tier of Hollywood earners. It confirms his value as an anchor for global streaming IP. It's a calculated strategic shift. When the traditional film roles failed, he leaned into a format and a skill set that was guaranteed to deliver.
And most recently, we're seeing his career versatility really flourish. He's showing that his dramatic capabilities haven't been sidelined by the action focus. His transition to a villainous role in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is a huge step.
A huge step. This role as the warlord Dementis is a complete departure, embracing complexity and darkness, and the critical reception validates it. The Washington Post called his performance potentially one of the all-time great screen villains.
That's incredible.
It earned him an AACTA award nomination, showing the industry respects this deliberate move toward antagonist roles. And beyond live action, he's diversifying further. He's doing voice acting, like the young Optimus Prime in Transformers 1. The machine is just running at full capacity with a packed future slate. So the professional trajectory we just detailed has had these profound consequences for his financial standing and a public image. We've established the massive earning power, but let's just quantify the sheer scale of his success.
He's been one of the world's highest paid actors for years, appearing on Friends lists multiple times in the last decade, 2014, 2015, 2018.
And his peak reported earnings were substantial. In 2019, he ranked 24th on Forbes' list of highest paid celebrities, with estimated earnings that year of $76.4 million US.
Wow.
This is consistent, high-level financial power sustained over multiple years, driven initially by the MCU and now reinforced by Extraction.
And beyond the wealth, his public image is so defined by his physique. He was named the sexiest man alive by People magazine in 2014, which really cemented that iconic sculpted physical image in popular culture.
That image isn't just a byproduct of his acting. It became a core part of his professional identity. Media outlets constantly report on his exercise routines, making him a global standard bearer for physical dedication.
And he wisely monetized that focus with the creation of his fitness and wellness app, Center. This moves his brand beyond acting and into the profitable lifestyle space.
Center is a masterclass in brand extension. It operates on a subscription model, giving customers access to personalized nutrition, wellness plans, and exercise routines from his own team. It leverages the on-screen success and physique he's paid millions to maintain.
And turns it into a diversified, recurring revenue stream.
Exactly. It insulates him from the volatility of acting salaries.
Now let's pivot from the business of fitness to the deep personal investigation into health itself, which was revealed in that 2022 documentary series, Limitless.
Limitless with Chris Hemsworth was a 6-part National Geographic series, executive produced by filmmaker Darren Aronofsky. The premise was using Hemsworth as this high-profile subject to explore the cutting-edge science and traditional methods humans use to seek greater longevity and health.
He was literally the world's most optimized human seeking to become even more durable. And the challenges he undertook were extreme.
The sources list some rigorous examples. We see him taking a plunge in icy Arctic water to test cold shock response and fasting for long periods to explore calorie restriction. The whole series positioned him as someone striving for the absolute pinnacle of human biological potential.
However, the show itself did face some significant cultural scrutiny. We should note the controversy surrounding his participation in an Indigenous Australian ceremony.
Right. The source material indicates that Indigenous groups raised strong concerns. They claim that the filming location chosen for a segment involving a sacred cultural ceremony was disrespectful to the culture. This criticism really highlighted the inherent sensitivity when commercial film projects use these deeply sacred or private cultural practices for entertainment, even when the intent is respectful.
Shifting to his personal life, he maintains a relatively grounded profile despite the global stardom. He married Spanish model and actress Elsa Pataki back in December 2010.
And a huge factor in maintaining that grounded life was the decision in 2015 to relocate the family from Los Angeles back home to Byron Bay in New South Wales. This provided a necessary buffer from the relentless Hollywood machine.
They have 3 children, a daughter, India, and twin sons. And the kids are deeply involved in martial arts, training, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, under Thalas and Soares, with Hemsworth often accompanying them to national tournaments. And let's just reiterate his official national recognition, which speaks to his status back home. He was appointed a member of the Order of Australia, AM, in the 2021 Queen's Birthday Honors.
That AM title recognizes significant service, in his case, for service to the performing arts and charitable organizations.
So, all of this context, the immense wealth, the peak physique, the grounded family life, and this public pursuit of longevity and limitless, it all makes the ultimate revelation from that series just staggeringly impactful.
Yes, let's discuss the APOE4 revelation, which really serves as the narrative climax of this entire deep dive. While filming Limitless, he underwent comprehensive genetic testing, which revealed a critical detail.
He discovered he inherited 2 copies of the APOE4 gene, one from each parent. For you listening, we need to unpack what this means. The APOE gene helps carry cholesterol and fats in the bloodstream. Everyone has 2 copies, but there are 3 common variants, E2, E3, and E4.
And the E4 variant is the critical one linked to increased risk.
Precisely. Having even 1 copy of APOE4 increases the risk of developing late-onset Alzheimer's. But having 2 copies, known as being homozygous for APOE4, dramatically escalates that risk. The source material explains that this makes him 8 to 10 times likelier to eventually develop Alzheimer's disease than the general population.
And this genetic destiny is rooted in his own family history, which adds this tragic resonance.
It is. His maternal grandfather suffered from the disease. So this is not a theoretical risk. It is a high-probability genetic predisposition confirmed by his family history. And this news completely reframed his entire pursuit of limitless health.
So the man who was paid millions to be the physical ideal, the epitome of human endurance, is suddenly confronted by a biological clock ticking on his cognitive health. What was his immediate public response?
The revelation was so profound that following the discovery, the sources note his public announcement that he would be taking a significant amount of time off from acting. This was a direct decision to slow down, to reprioritize his well-being, and to focus on preventative health measures like sleep management and stress reduction.
And he's already turning this deeply personal challenge into a public awareness tool, moving beyond the personal experiment phase of Limitless.
He is. He's scheduled to executive produce and appear in a forthcoming 2025 National Geographic documentary, A Road Trip to Remember, which will focus on his father's experience with Alzheimer's. He is choosing to engage with this difficult reality not by retreating, but by using his immense platform to raise critical awareness.
So if we synthesize the entire arc of Christopher Hemsworth, we see a path defined by constant, intentional adaptation. He started as a soap actor who had to overcome serious industry prejudice.
A prejudice so strong, it almost lost him the role of Thor because of a 6-week dance show appearance.
Right, and he successfully weathered that critical slump caused by failures like Black Hat, where his physicality became a professional liability by executing a brilliant, self-aware pivot into comedy with Ragnarok and Endgame.
Which established him as a versatile, highly charismatic performer, not just a muscle-bound hero.
He then leveraged that versatility and immense global recognition to transition into an indispensable, high-earning producer, anchoring massive streaming IPs like Extraction.
And that demonstrates a commercial power that operates entirely independently of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And most recently, we've seen him successfully expand his dramatic credibility by taking on the complex, villainous role of Dementis in Furiosa, earning critical praise for his range. It's a trajectory of almost flawless professional upward movement.
But, as the source material reveals, and as we discussed extensively in Section 4, the narrative ends with a powerful, deeply human contradiction. And this is our final provocative thought for you, the learner, to consider.
Hemsworth spent a decade achieving the absolute pinnacle of physical performance, commercial success, and global recognition, culminating in the Limitless series where he pursued ultimate human longevity. Yet in that very pursuit, he was handed a high-probability genetic predisposition to Alzheimer's disease. So the question is, How does this duality, the peak of physical mastery confronting an unavoidable genetic vulnerability, force him to fundamentally redefine what success, health, and a valuable life truly mean now that his future choices are governed by this biological reality? It offers a profound lens through which to view not just his future career decisions, but the very essence of human control over fate.